All right, thank you so much, Alex, for that wonderful introduction. Thanks also to the participants for making me feel like Justin Bieber. You know, his concert is cancelled. So this is the closest I could feel to being a superstar. Thank you so much to all the participants. Anyway, with us today, we have, I think, two of the most prominent women leaders here today in Malaysia. We have Azleen, who is the CFO of Jewel Digital Ventures, the PNB's digital arm. And we have May, who is a legend in the finance industry. She has been in financial markets for a very long time. So please, I know there was so much interest earlier on about how do you get into the industry. This is literally the two best people to speak to. We also have with us today Uqail, who is the representative of the new generation of leaders. And he's with KPMG, and he is, he has a lot of insight to share, especially on how the youth of today can really step up and be in a leadership position. So the first half of today was all about technical skills. It's about how do you build your technical skills, and that can only get you to a certain point in your life. Right? After that particular point in your life, you have to have additional skills in order for you to continue to move up. In your opinion, maybe you can start off with Azleen. In your opinion, what are the most important skills that you should cultivate in order to move up to the next level?
Okay. Hi, afternoon everyone. Thanks so much for CFA Society for inviting me. Thanks for Faridq, who is basically working closely with me in PNB Jewel Digital Ventures. So he's basically our advisor and basically head of investment. Okay, so what would be the skills that is actually important, right? In the employment at this point in time. So, first of all, where we come or where we function as a digital company of PNB. Of course, it's a digital company, so basically most of the skills are actually those with technical skills, right? So on my side, although I'm the CFO, but in terms of running of the operations, actually me. So I do strategy, investment, HR, even finance, procurement. So how do I do that beyond my current scope? So I think given this landscape of employers now who is embarking on transformation, right? So when it comes to transformation, there is actually no job scope. So when you get talents, you will actually list down what will be the prerequisite requirements. But what we look for is talents that can, I think the qualities that we look for is adaptability, resilience, knowing that it's a new business, so you have to try new things, right? So you have to have, you be resourceful. So I think it's more of having technical with social or soft skills. Because when you are building a company, I think the background where I had before is I was also pioneering teams of other setups. For example, Equity National Berhad. Back in 2009, we were the first government-linked private equity that was set up by EPU, Malaysia Economic Planning Unit. So there were no basically reference, right? So we have to refer to the European counterparts, for example. So you have to call, discuss, and then do your own template. So there's no template. So I think where I would, as an employer, what I look for is, of course, it's technical skills that you need to have, but you also have to be inquisitive, especially the young ones here. There's so many opportunities to learn now, and companies are going through transformation. So always have that urgency, that curiosity to actually learn beyond what you have studied, right? Because more than often, actually, sometimes what you study, you might not even practice, right? So I was telling even my daughter who just finished her IGCSE, she's not so sure what she wants to do after her IGCSE. So, but at least you have to have a plan for what you want to do in future, and the plan has to start with what you feel would be your strength or areas that you like, right? So from then you develop, because there's no certainty even post pandemic, there's no certainty, right? So I would say that, I mean, overall, it's you have to have the technical skills, but I think what takes you far is also the character that you have, right? You have to be resourceful. You have to know. You want to know, and taking the extra mile to actually, do good in what you are currently doing.
Understand. Yeah, and May, I mean, Azleen mentioned about how transformation right now, at least, it's a very uncertain field. There's so many changing variables. But as we know, in the finance industry today, it's very structured, right? It's very regulated, it's very structured. But in your career, especially when you started out, was it as structured here as it is today, or was there a bit of uncertainty at that time too?
Hi, hi everyone. Thanks for inviting Faridq and also CFAM. Structured, when you say structured, maybe you can define that a bit. What do you mean by structured?
As in, like, it's in a way a little bit matured, right? After the last 20 years, we know that the Malaysian market, especially, it's no longer what it was in the 90s, in the 2000s. So I'm just wondering if you were to compare today versus the time then, would you say that there was a lot more uncertainty there compared to today?
So I would kind of beg to differ the how structured the whole space is. Yes, I think there is a lot of regulations put in place for the whole finance sector, and that's kind of like, it provides you a framework on how the finance industry actually works. But the finance industry is a industry that is very vibrant, is ever changing, and I would say today is even more vibrant, and you can see that in the markets, right? If you look at the markets itself, in the past, when I talk to a active fund manager who is in the long money, and they go like, I can take a 6 months view and a 12 months view, and we invest that way. However, today, even as a long fund manager, active fund manager, it's so difficult. And why is it so difficult? Because in the morning, markets could be up. In the afternoon, markets could be down. Really, because I think technology has been a very game changer in this sense. If you think about 20 years ago, if you wanted to, you have a pen pal, how would you speak to your pen pal? It would be like a snail mail. How long does the information get from, say, Malaysia to, I don't know, to the Americas? It'll probably take 2 weeks or whatsoever, right? Today, in 1 second, I can send the information from Malaysia to US. That information, say for example, the Fed talks about something, within seconds or within minutes, if not, Bloomberg will be coming out with that information already. And that's how the markets are moving. And that's how vibrant it is and how quickly it moves. I think the other thing that has changed quite a bit, maybe from the past to today, is really compliance. I think there's definitely more need for compliance and the ability to do so, really on the back that technology allows, the ability for firms to actually analyze and see things which in the past we would not have been able to capture. And as long as you go, I suppose, as long as you go on the internet, as long as it's somewhere in the system, it can be tracked already. So I think that's the other big changer that I would see in the finance industry.
Well, I think that would be music to our audience ears, yeah, to hear that finance today is even more vibrant than it is 20, 30 years ago. And that's why I believe, if I can kind of draw some inferences for that, is that the future is going to be even more exciting. And that's why I think we are all here today, because of how interested we are in this. Now, let's bring Uqail into the conversation. Are you able to hear us?
Yes, can.
Thanks.
I am.
All right. Yeah, Uqail, you have a very interesting job role. Do you mind just, spending a few seconds just really explaining this particular role that you have today?
I see. All right. Thank you so much for the question. But before I address the question directly, I would just like to very much apologize to each and every single one of you for not being able to be with all of you today physically, as I am now currently in solitary confinement due to being COVID positive. And in that vein, I would actually like to express my utmost gratitude to CFA Society Malaysia for accommodating given my situation, right, the topic of leadership, transformation, and everything else that we're going to be talking about today is very close to my heart. And it's really an honor to be here to not just talk to all of you audience, but also talk alongside the corporate titans that we have here as part of our panel speakers. So to address Faridq's question just now regarding my job scope, it is quite interesting to say the least, right? So my title is Lead Special Projects and Stakeholder Engagement. So what that means, as the word suggests, I do a lot of engagement with not only people within the KPMG community, but also the community outside of KPMG. So my line of work involves with talent attraction, right? So my colleagues are actually here at the hall actually during the CFA Career Day, right? So you can actually give them a visit at our booth, right? So we do. So as part of my role, I do talent attraction. I do a little bit of hiring. I do other CSR related initiatives as well as other activities that is actually related to employee engagement, right? So not only that I actually communicate and engaging with people outside of KPMG, but also inside of KPMG as well, right? So it's actually a lot if I were to explain every single thing about my portfolio. But I'm most Stonington. If let's say any of you have any questions, it's a bit unfortunate I'm not here physically with all of you, but if let's say you guys have any questions that you would like to ask me regarding what I do specifically on a day-to-day basis, then I'm more than happy to answer your queries on LinkedIn. You can always search for my name, Mohammad.
Right, thank you so much, Uqail. I think that was really informative. Maybe a follow-up question to that is, you're part of the strategic engagement where you engage with a lot of I would say, potential recruits, potential hires. What are some of the skill sets that stand out to you in that aspect?
I see. All right. Well, that is actually a very interesting question, right? Especially after the onset of the pandemic, I would say on behalf of my team, on behalf of the recruitment and talent integration team at KPMG, the kind of skill sets that we look into as we hire prospective talents or candidates has actually shifted, right? Let us first address the obvious, right? So when we talk about technical skills, that have always been and forever will always be important, right? Especially at KPMG, if you join us as an auditor, a consultant, or even a tax consultant, having the right or the proper technical skills and technical knowledge and acumen is always going to be important, right? But in terms of the skills that we really try to search or look into would be, of course, the soft skills, right? And I could actually give three soft skills, the three kind of soft skills that I would advise prospective talents or soon-to-be graduates to actually master, especially if you plan to have or especially if you will soon embark on a professional journey, right? So number one is to have versatility, I would say, right? So when we talk about versatility, we're not just talking about candidates who know a lot of things or who know every single thing, because of course that's practically impossible. But we want people who have a knack or a passion to know a lot of things, right? They may not know everything, but they have a knack to explore a lot of things, right? So they constantly learn or relearn upskills and things like that, right? So as recruiters, we can actually look into this sense of versatility into a candidate based on their experience, not just within the classroom, but also outside the classroom as well, right? So if you have stellar academic record, but also at the same time you are really active in sports, in volunteering activities, exchange program, business challenges, and whatnot, that means that you are actually trying to garner as much experience as possible. So that's the one thing that we look into. Number two is reliability, right? So we want people who are not just smart or just smart or not smart, but also want people who have strong character, right? So people who are reliable, they are trustworthy, they are integrity, they say what they mean, they do what they say, and things like that. And last but not least, we also want people who have a sense of relatability, right? I think one of the things that we're going to be talking about today is, as I understand, it's also about leadership, right? So especially at a young age, right, or at least when you are at the entry level of your career, having a strong sense of relatability is very important, right? A sense of relatability means you are able to put yourself in the shoes of others, right? So if let's say your superiors is handing you down a work, right? So you also have to understand what their expectations are, for instance, right? You try to put yourself in their shoes. So what is it they are looking for from the portfolio or the task that they are given to you? Similarly, if let's say one day you are actually a superior yourself, And if you are handing down your junior task, it's very important that you also put yourself in their shoes, right? So you were once a junior, what were some of the things that you had trouble with, right? How can you now as a leader of them, right? So, and last but not least, relatability means also to have a sense of relatability towards the organization that you work at, right? So making sure that your mission, your personal values are also aligned with the values of that company, for instance, right? So these are the three skills or three personalities, characters that we look into when hiring a candidate, right? So versatility and reliability is actually easy to scrutinize and easy to see from a CV of the candidate, but relativity is the one that's the most important, yet the one that's most difficult to identify, I would say. But as long as you guys, as candidate or prospective talents, as you embark on a journey to apply for a job later, as long as you are able to execute these skills, that I would say you have a slightly higher chance to actually land your career, I would say. Hopefully that clarifies.
Thanks so much, Uqail. So there's a lot to unpack there. But essentially, there's technical skills is important, but you have to, also have soft skills. You also have to build up your leadership skills, and those are extremely important, or as important as technical skills. Now, before we move on to the next question, just want to remind everyone that you can submit your questions by just scanning the QR code that's behind me. And if you have any questions to our panelists, we will be asked along that line. All right, so to bring back to the theme of the forum, leadership. Now, Azleen, you've reached management positions today, right, in your career. So my question will be, was it by design? And what did you do in order to tilt the odds into your favor to becoming, or at least to reaching these types of roles? Maybe we'll start off with me.
For me, definitely, I would have imagined I would be here when I was in university. So just a bit of background, I actually did engineering. And if you think about it, even up to today, if you're an engineer and you graduated as an engineer and you tell parents, oh, I want to go work in a bank. They'll go like, what? What's wrong with you? You study engineering. Why are you going to a bank? Even some employers may not be open to that idea because there will be a bit of inclination that, oh, maybe you should be, I should look at more the finance. But I think incrementally, in Asia, society or employers are very much more open to people who are from different degrees. And the reason there is that diversity is actually quite important for firms. So having an engineering degree actually was interesting because in my university, in my class, we had 10 engineers in the college, and 9 of us actually didn't end up being engineers. All of us ended up either being consultants, or i.e. in the management consultancy space, or in investment banking. And that's how it started, right? And then I started my career in Hong Kong. Never would I have thought 4 years down the road, I decided to come back to Malaysia, do something totally different, i.e. in Hong Kong, I was doing corporate finance. I moved back here, I started doing equity. We are an equity broker here. So basically I went to sales. And if I think about it, sales was actually very, very daunting for me because I've done telemarketing when I was, after Form 5, I did telemarketing just to try it out, right? And imagine picking up a call and doing cold call, when you get your calls from, say, a Citibank, HSBC, going like, oh, would you like more cash? That's effectively what telemarketing was. And to me, it was like, oh, shucks, I'm not sure I can really do a sales role. But interestingly, I came back, I said let's just try it, right? What's there to lose? Let's get out of my comfort zone, try that and see where we go from there. And who knows, if I don't like it, you've worked in Hong Kong before, you've got a good degree, you've got experience. I can decide that I want to go out again and I'll go to Singapore and I go to Hong Kong. Of course, that didn't happen. I'm still here. I moved back in 2007. I'm still here in 2022. I got married, I had kids, so that's why I'm kind of quite settled here at this point of time. But my point is that I think there are a lot of people who kind of go like, I have young joiners, or even like people that I meet in the industry, right? And they go like, what are you thinking in terms of your career path? And they go like, oh, I want to get experience in fixed income, then I want to experience in equities. I I want to be in the sell side first, then I want to eventually go to the buy side. I want to run a fund, and I want to drive that. I think it's all well and good to have a plan. And maybe on hindsight, I should have had that. But I think having that plan gives you a sense. But I also think that there are opportunities that come up which are very unexpected. And I think when those opportunities come up, you should not just close the door. You should always be open for things, because that could change your life. That could change the direction of where you're going, and you could achieve something totally different. I think earlier, Faridq was, Azleen spoke a bit about this, Uqail spoke a bit about this, and I wanted to share a bit more on this. How do you get from a point of, being a graduate, going for an interview, getting the job that you wanted, to then growing within the firm to become a leader itself? I think today, having a degree, having a CFA, they are all very, very good things that you should have. Like, to a certain extent, having a degree is almost like a minimum requirement for a good job, right? We all know that. But I think it's also realizing that having a degree is not enough. Having a degree gets you a step into that interview room. If you are very keen on that job, I think you should, firstly, on your CV, make sure it's a very well-written CV. Don't have grammatical mistakes, because it shows and reflects who you are. CVs typically should be a page long. It should tell why someone should be looking at you and interviewing you. It is really the only thing from an employer perspective that we can see. Because from that, then I go like, okay, interesting, I will meet. Because firms like PNB, Dual Digital, they get so many CVs. And how do you stand out? So I think CVs are very important. Going to the interviews itself is also very important. Before you go to an interview, make sure you do your homework first. Don't go in not knowing what the company actually does. Trust me, I've seen people coming in for interviews and they go like, actually, I don't know what your firm does. And that basically moved you from here to down here in terms of the potential as a candidate for that particular job itself. So I think those are all things. It all reflects who you are. Having the passion, the drive helps you succeed in whatever you want to do. Having that common sense, resourcefulness, those are things that, you would have thought that everyone would have, but actually not. Some people, if you feel, you see someone that is among your peers is good, have that as a model. If you see a mentor that, wow, this person does this, and it's very inspiring, actively cultivate it within yourself, i.e., make sure that everything when you do, you're like, oh, am I doing this? Make sure you ask yourself, am I doing it right? And then thirdly, I think one of the most important things as well is that you don't work alone. You are not a prima donna. Firms do not need a prima donna. We don't need a star. Justin Bieber, we don't need one Justin Bieber. We need people that can work together. Because it's only when you work together, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. You get much more from that, and that's what firms need. And that's what leadership is all about. Why I say that? I started off, and like I said, as you start off your career, you are always, thinking about how I achieve, how my own performance can achieve, of course, leading to the team actually achieving at the end of the day. But when you are a leader, it's no longer about you yourself being an achiever. It's not about me being a great performer. It's about me getting my team members 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all coming along with me on the journey and actually all achieve at the same time. Because whoever that is weak, I actually need to put more effort. So if you think from a family perspective, you have 3 kids, number 1, number 2 does well in studies. And you're like, actually that one is the least of the problem. Number 3, who is like, the bongsu who doesn't want to do anything and just slack off, that's the one that you you can't just go, I write him off. You actually have to help him to actually move up. And that's where I think the challenges of leadership is, to actually bring the whole team to move together with you going forward. Sorry, I probably spoke a bit too much on that one, but
No, it's really important. Maybe Azleen, you can share your journey before I follow up question.
So basically, I think the path where I took is structured. I mean, you mentioned about structured, right? And I think Uqail said about accessibility, which is very important. I think the path for being an accountant is what's your end game, and why you actually choose this sort of sector industry. So for me, I know that actually I wanted to be an engineer, but somehow I got scholarship from Jayasan Telecom to do accounting. So I think I didn't want to burden my parents, right? Because I came from working. Both parents are working. My dad was in army. My mom was a nurse, right? So I think to afford education is whatever that's given to me, right? So I wanted to be an engineer. The degree that was actually given to me, full scholarship, was accounting. So I said, okay, let's try accounting, right? So little that I know that at first I thought, oh, it's going to be dry, it's going to be boring, it's just going to be numbers. Actually, it's your job, so your interest is how you make of it, right? So to me, I think the foundation stepping stone was very important. As a telecom scholar, you have to serve 8 years, basically 8 years, right? But I wrote into Yayasan Telecom at the point in time because I got the offer from KPMG. So KPMG is one of the big four here. To actually practice for 3 years. So I wrote into Yayasan and said that allow me to practice accountancy, right, rather than going back to telecom and service as a marketer. So somehow it was just disconnected. So the four of us, when some went to PwC, EY, and myself to KPMG. So we did that. And I think KPMG set the stepping stone in terms of how you could basically advance into the line, right? Because I think the prerequisite to be a CFO for listed company, you have to have ACA, equivalent CPA, SEAW, things like that. So I think the support from the firm is very important. I think the best time of my whole career is actually in KPMG, and you always think that auditing is, a lot of work, of course, reality hours, but you are with dynamic young team, because at the point in time you're so young, not married, so it's fun because even if the work is hard, but your peers are basically as gila as you, right? So it's fun to me, and as in auditing, you basically learn the operations of the company, right? So you learn also the management of a company, to the point that after I have completed my CCA, I was actually offered a job from the client. So I was auditing Petronas Zagan Berhad, it's a consumer product company. So I was a senior in charge, managing 15 team members in the group. So actually they offered, right? So one is accessibility, what Uqail said, right? So I think it's not just technical, it's not just social skills, but sometimes your visibility. So that's why pick the right stepping stone, right? So I feel that if you have opportunity to intern, just go, because that's your future, your future employer that you are having accessibility to, right? So I think that's very important. I think but I didn't. In the end, I didn't pick. I didn't actually accepted the offer. I went to Media Prima Berhad, so it's conglomerate media, which I was the FC for TV station, radio, and new media. So for me, I know that my path is, I've always chosen opportunity for growth. So I wanted to learn something more beyond, and I think that the next opportunity was actually in commercial, and Media Prima brought me to private equity, and then private equity. And then after 10 years, actually, I exited corporate back in 2012, and I did my own entrepreneurship. But when I did my own entrepreneurship, I had that basis of how to manage a company from my experience in working for people. So I think that's also what I always advise the young ones as well. If you have, of course, you have the burning desire to actually have your own company or startup, right? If you have the experience of 2-3 years to just work for employer, right? It's actually very good for you because you will learn a better thought thinking process when you work with people. So I basically advise, because my kids are actually at the age of going to uni, things like that, and trying to also you can't force them, but you can actually share with them what was the path of their parents. Right? So I feel that the young ones these days, of course, there's a lot of the gig economy is rising up. Malaysia 20% going up to maybe more. Outside Malaysia, Vietnam and all that, there are a lot of giggers as compared to Malaysia. The young ones actually like to work on their own, right? I feel that try and work with people to ensure that you have the maturity, thought thinking process, a bit of sustainability as well. Then you can venture outside, right? So I think what was the question again? So it's basically by design. But I am the type of person where I try to take experimental roles. So I go for growth. So I don't really go for structured. I think the foundation where I had before, auditor 5 years, check, commercial check. Then I felt that, okay, 10 years, I still had that runway of maybe 20-25 years right in whatever I want to do. So I go for growth. So I did entrepreneurship until after 4 years, an entrepreneurship unit by MOF actually discovered and said that why don't you come back and value create a creative fund. It's a 350 million fund from MOF, it's for my creative ventures, because I was a creative entrepreneur, right? So I managed that as a CFO with the other team, management team. So yeah, it's basically a developmental fund where we help them give funding, we help them in terms of how to do business plan, to do pitch and all that. It's 132 investees, 250 million fund, and it's basically it's my part is it's a good puzzle connection until digital, right? So suddenly digital, like it's all about digital technology, and there's opportunity for that. And again, I saw the opportunity for growth, so I went for it, knowing the fact that I have to roll up my CV again because it's an offshoot, it's a startup, right? When you already have managed 48 or 50 people, then you have to go into an entity where you have to, business build it again, right? So but to me, it's while you are young, just try it out. It's okay, right? So that's where I am now. It is by my own choice, but I think it's also because of the connection and trust where I had with all my peers and colleagues and my ex-bosses, because they know how sometimes, when you work with people, because I worked for 22 years, right? So they know how you can deliver, what would be the expectation of you. So I think that's very important as well, in terms of choosing the right employer, the right support, the right colleagues.
Thanks, Azleen. Uqail, we are going to come back to you in just 1 minute, but before that, I've got a follow-up question with me, because a lot of our audience members have an aspiration to work abroad. Yeah? So having experience working in Hong Kong, now in Malaysia, and you were looking at Singapore also at one point in time, I'm just trying to understand, maybe you can help our audience understand, what are the main differences between working abroad and here in Malaysia?
Well, when I moved back, then there was a bit of a cultural shock, to be fair. I think the pace of life is quite different. I still recall when I came back and this was not even in a work environment, right? And I was going up an escalator. My comment to my family members were like, gosh, the escalator is quite slow, huh? In Hong Kong, when I get onto it, it's like, I feel like I'm going to fall off, So I think if you had an experience, you had the opportunity, I think, and you want to do it, do explore it. I think it adds to your CV, adds to your experience. And then you are able to, if you do decide to come back, also bring that experience back. I think, in terms of the working environment itself, to a certain extent, maybe I don't feel it as much, really, because when I moved back, I was still with MNC, right? So a multinational. So to a certain extent, a lot of the frameworks, a lot of the way we did stuff was quite similar. So I don't feel that much of a difference there. So I would say the pace, would be the largest difference to a certain extent. I think people in Malaysia are much, much nicer. And I also say this because today we have my colleagues who are seated regionally, and they cover, because we are a broker house, effectively they cover stocks overseas, right? Overseas companies. And they come in here to meet the likes of Faridq, who is a fund manager and investing overseas. And the comment that they give is quite similar, even 10, 15 years after the point when I left, right? Their comment was still, Malaysians are just very nice people. Whereas I think in this, say, Singapore's and Hong Kong's, people are just generally more curt. And I think to a certain extent, it's also because, like I said, it's a fast pace of life. Everyone's just in a rat race. You're so focused on just doing your job, do your job, do your job, do your job. I think the experiences that you have with your colleagues and all, it's just very, very different. So it really depends on, I suppose, to a certain extent, what you are looking for. Some people will, after a few years, kind of go like, seriously? Yeah, maybe, I earn a bit more, I earn Sing dollar obviously 3 times more, but of course you have to think about it. When you take that paycheck back home, your cost is also very, very much higher. And I can tell you, that paycheck, if you just, of course, if you do conversion into ringgit, of course, it looks very much higher. But I would say the quality of life that you can get here in Malaysia is actually pretty good. So if you feel that there is that opportunity here, you can get a good job with a good firm here, I wouldn't say that your opportunities are extremely different compared to if you're overseas. I think there are opportunities here, and I think it's just question mark of, do you see it? Do you grab that opportunity? Do you, like Azleen said, no need to be very structured. Look at it, where the growth is. Just try lah. You're young. Go and try. Don't be so worried about failure or it's the wrong path. I think sometimes when you try, then only you know, because in the first few years of your career, you may not find your calling in the first few years, It's only after you've gone in there, you've done that, then you find, whether this is accounting really boring or is it really exciting? Some people could find it very exciting, right? And some people may go like, corporate finance, wow, it looks so busy and all. Actually, when you get in there, mind you, when I first started corporate finance, for the first 6 months, I spent 6 days in the office. All I did was go to office, come home, and I had 6 hours to sleep, and then I'm back in the office again. On Sundays, I'm on call as well. So, is that really the life you want? Again, it depends on what you want. It builds character, but it's also maybe not something that everybody wants. For me, I call it quits after 3.5, 4 years, and I go like, I want to change of environment. I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to just live in my job. So that's the reason why I made that change. But everyone, think of what you want in life. As we grow older, we kind of think like, actually, what do you want in life? You ask the 60, 70-year-old retirees, they go, actually, all I want in my life is, be able to have my family around, be able to have a comfortable life and health. So, obviously, when you first start your career, it's never the first thing in your mind. I never thought about that. All I wanted to do was, I wanted to achieve. I wanted to grow. I wanted to have job satisfaction. And that's what you probably will go through. But as you go through the different stages, you realize that things that you may want may be a bit different, and grow with that. I think you don't need, like I said before, you don't need to have that set path and fix yourself to it. It's your life. You can do what you want with it. My motto is always, when people tell you no, why not? Why not? Why cannot? Why cannot? Let me go see what else I can do. If plan A doesn't work, I want to still get there. Find out a plan B, right? There's a way to get it. Okay, maybe you cannot get full 100% plan A, but you can get 90% is very good. So I think that kind of like thinking will help you move ahead in achieving whatever you want in life. Yeah. Right? I don't know whether I really answered your question, but that's my attempt at it.
No, but I really like the way that you framed it, that your wants evolve over time, right? Your wants evolve over time. I think that's something also that the audience, I think, needs to appreciate. Yeah, their wants at 20 will be very different than at 30 and eventually, as you say, 60s and 70s. Okay, over to Uqail. Uqail, a question from the floor. Yeah, being a young leader, or being young, there's not that many opportunities for you to display your leadership attributes. So in your opinion, how can you best display this to a potential employer that you are ready for that leadership position?
I say, all right, thank you, Faridq, and thank you for the person who asked the question. That's actually a very, very interesting question, I would say, right? Because it is address the nature of leadership a little bit, right? Of course, there's always a stigma behind being a young leader, right? Of course, in terms of experience and things like that, of course, if you have more number of years or higher number of years working, of course, you have higher experience, then naturally to become a leader with that experience, it's more assured to your appointments. But I think I would like to address this question by talking a little bit about the range of leadership stuff, if that's okay, right? Well, think about leadership that many people, I would say a lot, I wouldn't say every person, but I would say a lot of people often associate it with authority, right? So it means that if you are someone who has a certain kind of authority in any organization, that means that you are leader, which is true. But conversely or contrastingly, that doesn't mean that if, let's say, you are not in a position of authority, you cannot be a leader, right? Because leadership is more like a character. It's not a position that's bestowed upon you, but it's more like a character personality that you can actually display and exude, right? Even before, I just want to sidetrack a little bit. Even at KPMG, you have you have a framework that's called AL. Everyone needs a framework basically. So it shows what are some of the qualities, the characteristics that you have to live by in order to be a so-called leader. Given your rank or given your position, whether you are associate, a senior associate, assistant manager, associate director, executive director, and partner, right? So how can you exude leadership skills so that you are able to see both high pass and deliver impact? So that's basically the gist of the framework, right? But the key message behind this framework is that no matter what rank or level of authority that you have, you can always be a leader, right? Because the rules behind being a leader is not that you have to have significant followings, right? So even if you are even small too, no matter how small or how big the team is, you can still become a leader, right? So the first person that you always have to be is yourself, right? So you have to know, you have to have like any other organization, you as an individual, you need to have like a set of mission objectives that you go at basically, right? So do you yourself have a set of objectives, right? So are you able to actually stick through with your plan, right? So are you someone who's able to follow through with your plan, like I said, right? So that is you basically yourself, right? And if you're comfortable with that, then of course it's at least a little bit easier for you to lead others as well, right? So for young leaders out there are certain things that you can always do. Even while you are in university, you show potential employers that you have the qualities or you have the potential to be a very great leader in the organization, right? So if let's say you are in university and then you take up leadership roles within your club, society, for instance, right? That is one indication that we always look into, right? Secondly, if let's say when we ask you your past experience, let's say doing group coursework and things like that, right? Or even sports, right? If let's say you are playing football, right, and if you tell us that you are the team captain or you are always the one volunteering to become to lead the group for their group coursework or something like that, that is always an indication that we can use that you have the tenacity to actually lead, right? Now, lead, it does not mean that you like to be bossy and so on, right? Of course, we always, as recruiters, we also like to probe to the bottom as to why or what motivates you to actually lead, right? And some people, if let's say your motivation behind, leading others is because you want to bring the best versions of themselves, right? And then you aspire to contribute, give back to your team members, to the how or what the situation is, then it means that you are, by right, you are actually showing and displaying very sound leadership skills, right? So those are some of the things that you can always actually portray to potential employers, right? So just because you are not yet a director or manager, that doesn't mean that you cannot lead other people yet, right? You can always lead others, you can always inspire others to become the best versions of themselves, and in doing so, you are in essence a step closer to being a leader, I would say. Hopefully that clarifies.
Thank you, Uqail. I think that was really informative, ways to hack your way and convince people that you do have that leadership role. So we have...
Faridq, can I just add something to that?
Please do.
I thought that was quite an interesting one, and I think as a new joiner and a young person into the workforce, I think one thing that you can actually do, I think the earlier panel talked about this as well. Don't think about, my job is 9 to 6, 6 o'clock, 5:45, pack all my stuff, 6 o'clock, sharp, computer shuts down, let's go. I think employers really appreciate when you are actually proactive. Proactive in the sense that when you see there's something, hey, I think I can improve the process here, or I think I can do this better. Put up your hand, speak to your bosses, speak to your supervisor and go like, I see this and, I would like to try. Your manager will probably very, very highly likely go like, okay, if you want to put the effort to try, I'll let you do it. And then you take ownership, and that's an opportunity for you to show that, hey, I can see opportunities of how I can make things better, grow the firm, and I can take accountability for that and drive it. And that would, in all little small steps, if you keep consistently doing this, trust me, your bosses will realize it, how much of an asset you are. Because proactiveness is very, very important, especially when you're young. Sorry.
I think that's a really, really great point. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Next one is, I think I'll take one from the audience poll. I think this is a really interesting question because it touches upon your background a little bit. The attendant asks, I read a piece of news that it is hard to be employed again if you were once an entrepreneur. In your opinion, is that true?
Okay, not true. Basically, it depends on the alignment of, what would be your future employer or your boss would want out of you. I am actually known to be recruiting people beyond JD. This is what happens in Jugo Digital Ventures because what we do here, tech talent in Malaysia is so scarce, right? So when there is opportunity to have somebody with the right experience to come into the team without even having that budget. We don't believe in budget here because it's to us it's because industry itself is fintech, right? So fintech you're known to be snooze to lose, right? So I think the 80% of our cost is actually HR talents, right? So for us, if you have the right mindset first, the right drive, and of course alignment of what you want to do, and that person can deliver beyond the JD output, then so they will individuals that we recruited is beyond whatever that's budgeted, whatever. We don't believe in that. So as long as you can find talents that can really value create more than what you've actually envisioned, right? So we pull them, we'll basically pull them back. So 80% of Jewel's team members are all startup or ex-entrepreneurs, right? Because of the requirement to actually build, right? So it's basically a different rigor that require from those that have been functioned from corporates. But from my experience, as corporate go to entrepreneurship back to corporate, right? So I think where MOF saw, because my appointment has got to be approved by the ministry at the board level and the ministry, right? So where they saw was I had experience on both worlds, so I know how both worlds tick, and I know they know that I will be value. It's a developmental fund, so it's a fit where an ex-entrepreneur and also ex-corporate can basically help in value creating the creative entrepreneurs, because these creative entrepreneurs were given not grants but basically financial assistance, right? So they are loans and revolving credit. So they are credit products, right? So they have to return back and pay off. So you have to make sure that they develop their whatever product or business so that they are able to turn around and pay back to the government. So it's an agency, but mostly when you think about agency government, it's not profitable. But for us, Equity Ventures is actually a profitable entity, and we give back to the government in some dividend. So at least, so it's always what do you call that? Managing. For me, it's managing P&L, right? So making sure that whatever we give back, we return it back. So I think employers would want. It depends on how fit your future employer are. It's basically alignment of what they expected. But I feel that having the experience of both talents would be quite a value add, because you know that the side of the talent that has done their own thing is a bit more creative, I would say. Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, Azleen. I think the next question is really interesting. I think both me and Azleen, you have a lot to share about this. It's so rather quite philosophical. The question goes, if you had to redo everything, knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently in your career? A bit tough, right? A bit tough. This one is a little bit out of the box, which I think reflects the caliber of our audience members here today.
Okay. What I would redo back? I would think that wow. Okay. So what I would redo back would be I feel that at some point there were opportunity to work overseas, right? I think had the opportunity to work overseas. I think for KPMG or Big Four, the talents have but it's basically handpicked by the management. Right? So you could, for us in KPMG, we could basically be seconded to Singapore, UK, for that matter. I think during my time. But I opted not to because I felt that after serving 5 years, I would still be, wanting to work in Malaysia, and I just started a family at point in time. But I think turning back, I think that would be a good experience. And even till today, I have that urge and an opportunity, if there's opportunity that also my lab to work beyond Malaysia, I would take it up. But yeah. So I feel that if you have the opportunity to serve, beyond your shores, why not, right? So I think that I something that look back, really. Yeah.
given that I've had a bit more time to think, I think for me, if you look at my history, I mentioned that I worked in Hong Kong, then I moved back, but really I was with UBS all throughout, despite sort of like changing roles, changing departments. Obviously, as I moved up, different responsibilities, different exposures. The company, had division mergers, so there was a lot of things to learn. But to a certain extent, maybe if I had the chance to rethink about it, maybe I would have tried to explore a bit and have a bit more, maybe move to another firm, try something different, maybe. I think the challenge for me throughout the years is, I'm sure all of you will be like, oh my God, how could you work with a company for like 19 years, right? All my friends think I'm crazy, but I think for me it was really because I didn't have a push factor, and the pull factor was just not very strong. When I first came back, the first few years, I had opportunities to go to Hong Kong again, but I made a decision that I quite liked what I had here. It was a great team to work with. It was a great firm to work with, and everything was just falling into place. And I was like, maybe not at that point of time. So I suppose for me, probably, if I had the chance to go back again, maybe I would explore other companies. Really, because I think there's value in seeing different companies, how different companies work, because then you can get actually the best practices from across the companies. And in fact, you also can build a lot of networks, because then you have a lot of ex-colleagues from elsewhere, right? There's Azleen's so great, right? Get to go into the entrepreneurship and then move back into the corporate world. I think those just adds a bit more flavor and experience to your life. I'm not saying change jobs every 2 years. It doesn't look very good in a CV. But if you do 4-5 years, and then, in the beginning of your career, 4-5 years, and then you see, maybe it's time to just go try something different, explore again and push yourself out of the box again. So I think maybe that would be what I would want to do.
Oh, that's great. That's really great. All right. Unfortunately, we have more or less run out of time. Now, before we wrap things up, why don't we have each we go around, starting with maybe Uqail, about what are the last pieces of advice? What are the last pieces of advice that you have for our audience members today? Maybe to move up faster in their career. Maybe start off with Uqail.
I see. Okay. Well, that's an interesting question. I guess just one advice that I would like to give to the audience today. It's not just about just the top leadership, but in any realm of right? I guess if there's one thing that I could tell you how to achieve always strive for growth, is always think about how you can give back to others now. Right? So when we talk about leaders, one thing that they do is, of course, to be of service to other people, especially if they are subordinates, their problems and things like that. But it's not act. Can think about how can we keep, giving back to those around you, like instead of that, in your company, your organization, whatever it be, then you are already on path of growth, I would say. Even when I started to come and my audience, create audit actually before going to talent management. But then one of the things, no matter what career aspiration I had, one thing that was only that was myself asking, what can I do to actually give back, right? So I think, and all these years, despite the changes, we have one still in the same company. I am still even fortunate enough to actually be in a position that I'm able to give back to those around, be it intern, factor, or PG, right? So I guess if you live by that network, right? So you aspire also to have giving back to others, then growth, sense of fulfillment always come naturally to you. But especially if you aspire to become a leader one day, that is more important to actually have that kind of mindset, like thinking about how you can actually move something. Right? So if that's just one by something bigger aspect, that would.
Alright, maybe you can hear from us.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Maybe for aspiring employee or those who are actually working, looking at switching, I think it's pretty much do your best at this point in time. Live in the moment. Be prepared to be adaptive because things you're not sure of certainty, right? Just do your best at this point in time. Always to me it's other than work, it's at this point in time it's also protecting the team members, right? So it's basically amanah. It's to me it's very important. So you got to be empathetic for other people as well. So of course deliver, teamwork, adaptive. Have the right mindset and put your all out or all in to what you do. Chill.
To a certain extent, quite similar to you. But I think to excel first, you yourself needs to be happy. That means you need to feel that I'm progressing as a person. You need to be happy in your job. If you're unhappy, don't blame the firm. Figure out why you're unhappy. Is this the wrong job for you? Is it someone in the team that doesn't work very well? Then engage with your bosses. So I think it's very important to make sure that you're always looking at yourself and looking at how you can improve yourself and be happy. And if you can continue to have that kind of mindset, I think you will just realize that you're just growing on your own, right? And your employees will be able to see that. Even if you decide to be an entrepreneur, you will be able to be successful because you'll be like, whatever it is, at least you as a person, you're growing, right? The achievements will come alongside that. If day one it's not there, still keep on the mindset, I'm growing, I'm investing into my future. Just like how your parents actually go he still cannot read, never mind, we continue to teach him. After 1 year, 2 years, eventually he will learn how to read. That's the kind of mindset you have to have. Today I'm not successful, I continue to invest in myself. And investing in myself could be harvesting 5 years later. You may not see it today, but realize that as long as you become a credible employee, your employers will see that. If someone is not able to appreciate you today, well, someone will, and you've got to find that right employer to appreciate you. So hopefully that's helpful to you guys.
All right, thanks, May. So in summary, he learned from May, which is you can be brave. You have to be brave. You have to be proactive. We learned from Azleen, chase growth in your career. Identify where the areas of growth and aim towards that. We learned from Uqail that you're never too young to show that you can step up and be a leader at every level that you are. All right, so to close the gap, to kind of close the circle, once again, I think we can take a page out of Justin Bieber's book. His first song was Baby, but he took risks. He was brave, and he was young enough to sing, and that's why his last song was Yummy. And with that, thank you very much to our speakers.